Ladies and gentlemen, back at it again. It is Fourth and Frames. Packed house tonight. I am Red Manuel. I have Nate Markham, Jorge Edwards, JT Orange, and Aiden Weingartner here as we do our first redraft mock of the year. We're going 4 rounds, super flex, anything goes, just to give you an idea of what ADP might look like this time of year. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get it popping.
This should be played at high volume, preferably in a residential area.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in to Fourth and Frames. Like I said, I'm Red Manuel. I got 4 of the greatest minds in fantasy football analysis here with me tonight as we see my man Nate Markham, who I believe this is the first time this season that he and I are actually able to get together this year. Huh, Nate?
Yeah, feels like that, man. It might actually be.
I think it is, man. But you know what? It's all good. It's good to see you. You been okay, dude?
Yeah, man. Been great. Yourself?
Oh, better not deserve. And also to the right of Nate, we have the boss man himself, the boss hog outlaw himself, top dog, tribal chief Jorge Edwards. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. I'm just here to press buttons and make this thing go smoothly. But thank you very much for having me on.
You know what, Jorge, the door is always welcome for you, and the door is always open for you. You are always welcome, and you know that. And also from the Fantasy in Frames family, you might know him from the brew, but JT, baby, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. 3rd show in a row, so all warmed up, ready to roll. So I've been talking IDP, already talked Dynasty. Now let's do some redraft.
You are Fantasy in Frames Iron Man tonight. And speaking of Iron Men, Aiden Weingartner, it seems like since the beginning of the year, you have become a regular on the show by hook or by crook. My man, you've been doing a great job. You've been killing it on the content with the writing. You've been killing it on the podcast. You're not getting tired yet?
You know, I love this stuff, and I can't wait to jump into some redraft ADPs tonight to get a feel for some things at this very early stage before the NFL draft.
And yeah, I'm glad you said that because that is exactly why we're here. We are going to go into our first redraft mock of the years. And here's the rules tonight, guys. We're going 4 rounds. We're doing PPR scoring. We are looking for 1 quarterback at the most. Mainly what we're trying to do is give you guys, our watchers, our listeners, the most actionable ADP content we can as humanly possible. No real news and notes we're going to go through this week. We're just going to go ahead and we're going to jump right into this thing with the 1-1. Jorge, go ahead and start that button. Let's get that beautiful bean footage rolling with the 1-1. We have a 1-minute clock going in between picks.
All right, we're off.
There we go.
Oh, yeah.
Off to our browsers.
Wow. So, of course.
Oh, it's the one guy that's not online yet.
It's okay.
It's okay. We can talk.
And even so, if the auto pick here looks like it's going to be Jamar Chase, that still has to be the right pick, right, Nate?
Yeah, I don't have a problem if you take Chase. I don't have a problem if you go Saquon as well either. And that kind of leads to a question I had for you guys as far as expectations and anticipation is that if the assumption is that Saquon's the one from the running back position, besides Bijan, are there any other running backs that you think could overtake Saquon for the first running back taken in this upcoming draft?
Jahmyr Gibbs.
Okay. And that's probably the only.
I think it's a fair argument. I know we splits time, but have you seen him? I don't. So.
I think that's it. I don't think there's anybody else that I would say. Saquon. Outside of being a glamour pick, if someone wants to get real frisky, sure. But in traditional redraft, no.
And well, now looking at the board, it looks like Saquon was the 1-1 on the auto pick. Then Jamar Chase goes the 1-2. Our boy Drew Scott, who can't be with us tonight, but you know what? He takes that pick anyway. Jorge goes with Bijan at 1-3. And here we are, our producer extraordinaire with Brock Bowers at the 1-4. JT, I'm just going to go ahead and ask you there. Brock Bowers 1-4, too high, just right. You good with it? How you feeling?
If we're just doing straight one PPR for every position, that's too high for me. Obviously, I'm going Bowers top 5 in a 2-point PPR, a 1.75. But for me, he's more of a second round guy in redraft if you're not going a huge tight end premium. So for me, little early unless there's a nice premium. If the premium's high, I would take him.
Yeah, and I mean, I have to agree with that. So we're sitting here so far. We have Saquon at the 1-1, Jamar Chase at the 1-2, Bijan 1-3, Brock Bowers with the 1-4, Gibbs, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Nico Collins, the 1-8, all the usual suspects. I'm going to go with Amon-Ra St. Brown at the 1-9 simply because I just like the production. That guy has been rock solid, consistent every year. We know he's the guy in Detroit. We know he's going to get 150 targets. It's just hard to go wrong with a guy like that. How do you feel about this? How this first round is shaking out so far, Jorge?
I mean, it's very chalk. I mean, it's one of those things where you can make the argument in the first round outside of the Bowers pick, in my opinion. Sorry, Jim. You could make the argument that all these players in the first round are kind of interchangeable, and it's really a matter of like, who do you like the most? And you're not going to win any battle here for value. It's literally just who are the best players that you think are available. And for the person who took Nico Collins, I could very well, if I took Nico Collins, I could also be very happy with Amon-Ra. I guess if there's one that sticks out to me is Puka with Devontae Adams now being in LA. Is he a first round pick? Or is he now becoming an early second round because the presence of Devontae Adams?
Jorge, I'm going to say that I think Puka Nacua is 100% a first round pick because that's a consolidated target share. Like if both of those guys get 140 targets, then nobody's surprised, and that still returns great value on Puka.
Love it.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you. I think that the ceiling would have been higher and the floor would have been higher without Devontae, of course. But another consistent year, and you have to think that instead of Stafford force feeding Devontae Adams even out of the gate, you think it's going to be a heavy workload for Puka target share wise, and then that's just going to, as Rhett said, be consolidated back to the norm. And points per target, points per yard, every metric scream that Puka should be able to replicate on a per game basis last year, and even sorry, I was looking at the thing. So yeah, I would say that Puka and Neighbors and Thomas and Drake London, all four, any one of those, I think if someone wants to sneak them into the end of the first round and make an argument, I'll listen. I think everybody has a compelling case.
Now, I want to jump to Aiden here. I want to ask him a question because if there was a guy who was kind of surprised they slid that low, I mean, Justin Jefferson in the mid first round at the 107. I mean, this guy, it feels like he's a top 4 player in fantasy football every year, Aiden. So I know mock drafts always change and they always fluctuate from draft to draft. But Justin Jefferson at the 107, do you think people are just scared or in this particular draft, people might just be a little scared of the J.J. McCarthy factor or what?
Sorry, I was just making a pick. I'm not scared of it as much as other people are just because Kevin Count's systems has gotten production out of like literally anybody who's back there, Nick Mullins, throw anybody back there. It doesn't matter. Justin Jefferson's shown to be pretty QB proof. So I'm not really worried about it personally.
And right. And so as we are going through the end of the first round, we saw Devon Achane at the 111 by Nate, Malik Neighbors at the 112, and JT bounce back with the Brian Thomas Jr. at 2-1. JT, do you just have a thing for LSU receivers right now? Be honest with me.
I just like both those guys. I also think both those teams are going to throw the ball a ton this season. I know we're not 100% sure who the Giants QB is going to be, but I don't care who it is. I think they're going to throw the ball a ton. And we saw last year, even with the bad QB play, Neighbors was awesome. So I like him. This is probably 2 more dynasty picks, you would think, but I actually think both these guys are going to absolutely light it up this year. I think Brian Thomas is going to be the number 1 for sure. Hopefully a healthy
What the hell?
Trevor Lawrence, and then I like both those guys. I think they're going to see just a ton of looks. It's tough to pass on AJ Brown there, but I just think with the way they run the ball in Philly, I'd rather have two guys who are going to get force fed.
We're doing third round reversal.
I'm
not opposed to it. I didn't know that was.
It looks like it, and that's perfect for me because that gets me right back to JT. I love the third round reversal. I didn't think I was going to get him back, but it worked right into my favor. I love it. I love it. I think
Oh,
oh no, you fixed it, and now I don't get him. What?
You were not going to get him.
it.
There was zero
It's a
chance you were
snake,
going to
yeah.
get him.
the strikeout just happened. So we just nicked the third round reversal and crushed JT's dreams, which is fine.
Right.
Nate, let me go ahead and go to you right now because at that 2-2, last week Keith Fleming was on the show and he made a case for Drake London perhaps having a shot at being the wide receiver 1 in fantasy this year. I mean, at 2-2, that has to be great value. We know Michael Penix targeted him very much down the stretch last year. Do you feel like 2-2 is a value for Drake London?
I don't know if I'd say a value. I'd say I'm happy where it's at because as you said, if he replicates weeks 16, 17, and 18 with Penix, then you're getting the most targeted wide receiver in the league. He had the most yards in the league in that span. 6 catches of 20 plus yards, so going downfield. The touchdowns were there. Everything that screams solid, consistent. If you're going to have to wait till pick 14 to take your first, to get the wide receiver, I'm comfortable with him, especially as like JT said, AJ Brown, a little more run heavy with the Eagles. JSN, Mike Evans, Devontae Adams, Ladd, and Garrett Wilson to follow. I think there was a tier break between London and those guys. The only other thing I was considering was if I go back to back at running back, and I did like, Bucky's in a great spot, draft value wise. Derrick Henry, of course, in a single year redraft, you don't have to worry about the age 31 season, even though it's bound to be something that people are going to talk about once draft season starts to roll around. He'll get pushed back, and it's the same song and dance every year. I trust in Henry pretty much every year.
Yeah.
Breece Hall as your third running back. That's
oh my goodness. I have thoughts on this, Aiden. We talked about this last week.
I know.
Yeah, but what I want to go to now is I want to go to the 2-5, and I want to go ahead and maybe offend Aiden a little bit as I do this. Josh Allen was the first quarterback taken off of the board. Guys, let's go around the frame, starting with Nate and then to Jorge and JT and then Aiden. Are we absolutely sure that Josh Allen is the unequivocal, unquestioned QB1 in fantasy in 2025?
I don't think there's yes and no. I'm not going to answer that because I can't say with unequivocal, guaranteed one. I'll put him and Lamar both in their own specific tier, and then I'll let you make that decision. I wouldn't be opposed to either one. I would be opposed to taking a onesie position in the second round in a redraft, but I understand where he's coming from. If it's only 4 rounds, take the separators at each position, I guess.
I'll unequivocally say I'd rather have Lamar Jackson over Josh Allen. I think we saw Lamar Jackson's numbers not only increase rushing wise with the presence of Derrick Henry, but his passing yardage and passing metrics have also went up last year. So, it's crazy to think of somebody like Lamar Jackson being on the upward swing of, play on the field, but the guy is doing it. And, many people, sorry, Aiden, cover your ears, thought that it was BS that Josh Allen won the MVP and it should have been Lamar Jackson. Anyhow, I said cover your ears, damn it. Why didn't you cover your ears?
Forgot.
Newbie.
I forgot.
Slipped my mind.
Yes, I'd rather have had Lamar, but in the second round in this situation, again, we're pulling hairs to Nate's point. Like, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other.
Right. Well, we're looking at the rest of this second round, and we are sitting here. We see Jackson Smith and Jigba, Bucky Irving, a pick that I love in the late second round. 2-9 stands out to me, and I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to talk to you, JT, about this because it appears we may be at the end of the rope with the Christian McCaffrey hype train. Are we finally at a place where we feel like Christian McCaffrey is a value this year, or are we kind of seeing the beginning of the end with him?
I think he's a value. I think he's going to fall a little bit. Obviously, if he has another year this year like he had last year, I think people are going to be absolutely completely out on him. But we've seen him bounce back from injury-plagued years to have monster years in the past. When he had a couple back-to-back injury-plagued seasons, I was all over him, buying him in Dynasty, taking him in redraft leagues because I was like, hey, he's going to go back up. He's going to bounce back. I think getting him late second round in a redraft, I'm totally good with that, seeing as he was a guy that was either 1-1, 1-2, or 1-3 last year in redraft. So if you can get him late second round, obviously that comes with a chance and some risk. As you know, he buried your team last year, most likely, if you had him where you drafted him in a redraft league. But I don't mind taking a shot on him late second, early third round for sure. I think him and JT, I think even JT going 3-1 to me is a bit shocking, but I probably always higher on him than everyone else. I think he's in for another really good season as well. So if I can get either of those guys late second, early third, I feel like I won.
Yeah, and that's a great case. And Jorge, I'm just going to go ahead and ask you real quick while we're still on. Is there any way we can add a couple rounds to this thing while we're going or what?
Let me see if I can do this on the fly. Hold on.
Oh, we're adding.
I mean, we got plenty of time, so we can have all kinds of discussions. As Jorge's handling that, let's go ahead and let's continue going through and starting on this third round. JT, you just mentioned Jonathan Taylor, and you talked about how much you love him, especially at the 3-1. Tell me about the Jonathan Taylor profile for you with everything that's going on with him this year. We know there's quarterback uncertainty. We know that they probably don't throw the ball very well. We know Daniel Jones might play quarterback, but what's the appeal of Jonathan Taylor? Is it because of all of those things that you're so in on him this year?
I think they're still going to lean heavily on Jonathan Taylor, whether it's AR or whether it's Daniel Jones. I think they're going to want to run the ball. I really do. I think JT is still going to be the man. I think he's a little underrated. At this point, I think every Colts player is a little underrated, and that's just because of the uncertainty. So if you still feel like they can be decent, I think now's the time to buy a lot of those guys, especially in redraft. I think they're going to fall just because of the uncertainty at QB. So I'm going to buy the value on some of those guys. I think JT, even with all the uncertainty, he's a guy I think is still going to eat this year.
I'll say that at the 2-2, I had both between Drake London and Jonathan Taylor queued up. I was debating between the two, and for him to fall down to 3, I would love to be in the first spot and have Jonathan Taylor come all the way back around. It would make me more tempted to go chase and then maybe take a wide receiver first, but I don't know. Saquon.
I'd be pumped if I was drafting 1-1 and I got Barkley and JT back to back. I would be absolutely fired up.
And moving into the 3-2, I want to ask you a question. If the Los Angeles Chargers, I'm sorry, muscle memory kicked in there. If the Chargers take a wide receiver in the NFL draft this year, how much does it affect Ladd McConkey's ADP potentially in your eyes?
I think his ADP could fall, not a lot, but a bit. And he's still that slot monster in terms of targets out of the slot. So if that ADP falls, I would take advantage of that immediately, and then he would be a value. But he shouldn't fall too much, in my opinion, but maybe he will.
And continue to go through the third round. We have Garrett Wilson at the 3-3, Tyreek Hill at the 3-4. What a fall from last year. Brees Hall at the 3-5. I discussed last week my hatred of him. If y'all want to discuss that a little bit later, we absolutely can. Lamar at the 3-6. Kyron Williams at the 3-7. Chase Brown at the 3-8. I want to stop here because I'm going to come back to you, Nate, because there's some buzz perhaps about the Bengals, perhaps looking at running back in the NFL draft. This is another guy where there's some uncertainty as of right now. But if there was a running back selected, how high are you on Chase Brown regardless this year?
I'm still where he's going, if not a couple picks higher. We did this last year. Remember when it was, are you concerned that it's Zach Moss there with Chase Brown? Zach Moss will clearly eat into Chase Brown's end of season value. And It's not what Chase Brown is a very solid, versatile, durable running back. He proved that at Illinois. He's proven that so far in the NFL. While there's buzz, sure, maybe they'll draft another running back. I think the offense is prodigious enough that Chase Brown should be more than suitable, especially if you're getting him in the middle of the third. And pause 1 second.
So just a heads up here, everybody. There was a request in the chat by Drew that since we're adding on the additional rounds, can we make this mock be a little bit more roster position centric, meaning instead of having all these flexes, we'll have like dedicated quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and flex spots. So I went ahead with that. So your app, if you're doing it on your app or if you refresh your screen,
Oh yeah, I got it.
mock, you should see the change now. So we're good to go.
Easier to keep track of too.
Yeah. Thank you, Drew, for checking in on us. That's why you're a pro, even when you're not on screen, baby. So look, as we continue to go through this third round, we see Lamar, Kyron Williams, Chase Brown, Jaden Daniels at the 3-9, which is a player I love at that value. TJ Hawkinson, Alvin Kamara, and Marvin Harrison at the 3-12. Marvin Harrison was an air yards monster last year. That didn't really translate, but that tends to be one of those stats that tends to be a little more sticky. So I'm just going to go ahead with you, JT. Are we buying low on Marvin Harrison this year or what?
I think if you're going to get in on him, now's the time. Everybody was so high on him last year. He was going so early in Dynasty and redraft leagues, going way, way high. If you go back and watch the film, man, he was open a ton, and Kyler Murray just didn't get him the ball. I mean, I think people are a little down on him just because Neighbors and Thomas had such big years. I think Harrison can easily have that year this year. I'm pumped to get all three of those guys right in a row. I mean, obviously, if you'd done this last year, it would have been flipped. It would have been Marvin Harrison, Neighbors, then Thomas. But I love being able to get Harrison in the third round. I love 3 second-year guys that I think are all going to see a ton of targets.
Yeah, and yep. So I'm sorry about that. I had you talking as you were making your pick.
That's all right. You gave me my guy Laporta I had in my queue here. I was gonna take George Pickens. That would have been my pick. I have a unhealthy love for George Pickens, so that would have been my guy if he didn't go right in front of me. Running back wise, here with me only one. Just really searching, trying to figure out a guy that I think is worth taking here. This seems a little crazy to me, but I think I'm going to give him a shot this year, and that's Travis Etienne. I think getting him at 6-1 late, I think he's a guy, can he have a bounce back year? I'm hoping so. I'm hoping he has a bounce back year, but if at this point, if he can give me, 80% of what he did 2 years ago, I'm going to feel really pumped about getting him in the 6th.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we were really high on him last year, and that just didn't quite work out for one reason or another.
The Jags just kind of fell apart. It was just ugly. They didn't. I just felt like I feel like they're going to have much more offensive cohesion this year.
And so, yeah, I mean, I love that. So as we were going through that fourth round, Kenneth Walker led off that fourth round. Then DJ Moore, Jalen Hurts, T. Higgins, Rashee Rice, Terry McLaurin, James Cook, Jalen Waddle, DK Metcalf, Joe Burrow, Joe Mixon, and Courtland Sutton. Guys, I want to stop on the DK Metcalf situation right now here at 4-9 because he's on a new team. We know the physical capabilities, but he's always been a guy that, for me, always feels like for what he should be it quarterback play or something else, he never seems to quite hit that ceiling. And Nate, with us still not knowing what that quarterback situation is going to be, let's assume it's Aaron Rodgers simply because that seems to be the buzz that's going around. What does DK Metcalf's fantasy profile look like this year, say if Aaron Rodgers was a quarterback?
I don't know if it's a significant move up or down per se. I think that the addition of Cooper Kupp's going to be interesting to see exactly how much he's force-fed, if any, and if he can stay healthy. But I've never really been super, especially like in a PPR, like with this specific draft. I like, obviously, the half PPR upside more for DK just because I think the touchdowns should be there. And Aaron Rodgers has shown an affinity for liking to throw the ball within the 3-yard line. I think is that what we were talking about last year, and that's the stat that everybody had that he threw
Howard
more.
Talked
Yeah,
about.
exactly. And big body, of course, that's gonna bode well. But then again, Cooper Kupp has been a red zone, monster over the years. DK Metcalf is always the intriguing one for me to talk about because physically, I want to believe that he's just every year could be
the guy.
It's like, and I find myself getting ready to say, yeah, and then I start to talk down, and I realize, based on what merit, other than the uncertainty at quarterback right now, I don't know.
Oh, yeah, just this the time.
him.
Yeah, I got you.
So yeah, we had DK Metcalf, Joe Burrow, Joe Mixon, Cortland Sutton, and then in the 5th round, a guy who I really feel like might be a little bit undervalued going at the top of the 5th in Devontae Smith. Jorge, we've seen him just be a consistent producer all through the years, even with AJ Brown, even with Saquon Barkley. This is a guy that just kind of gets it done and gets it done well. So we got to feel like that's a pretty decent value at the top of the 5th, huh?
Oh, absolutely. And you hit the nail right on the head with AJ Brown. We're not talking about AJ Brown hurt, not playing. He's the number 1 de facto overall. Like, he literally is the 1B to AJ Brown's 1A. And there are some weeks where you could make the case where it's flipped. And I don't think you can go wrong there with Devonta Smith.
And then we have Chris Olave at the 5-2, Monty at the 5-3, Zay Flowers at the 5-4, Najee Harris, Chuba Hubbard, James Conner in that run 5-5 through 5-7. Guys, let's park there because it seems like this mid-5th round, based off of this draft, it seems like a very unsexy but steady block of running backs right there, and Harris, Hubbard, and Connor. So, Aiden, out of those 3, you pick Najee. So, you have to feel like that's your preference, huh? Why do you like Najee out of these 3 more than?
Well, we know Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman like to run the ball, and we know Najee Harris is a between-the-tackles workhorse type back. I feel like Najee Harris has been overhated his entire career. Like, I've really liked him his entire career. I feel he's always been undervalued, and if he slides to – where did I pick him? Like 5th round? And if he slides to the 5th round, I'd absolutely take him out of those, like, clump of dead zone RBs, if you will, at the top there.
I love that 5th round of running backs. I literally had every one of those guys on my list coming back. I took Kenny Walker, but I had Monty, Najee as 1-2. I had James Conner as my 3. I had Etienne as my 4 and Hubbard as my 5 in that 5th round. So all those guys are on my list. Something to think about where some of these guys are going. That if you've haven't gone running back early, you probably need to start eyeing running backs maybe in this 5th round.
Yeah, because we're gonna bounce back on that in a little bit because you had Godwin, George Kittle, Jameson Williams, and George Pickens. We'll call that the upside back-to-back right there. Laporta, then Etienne, Xavier Worthy, Jerry Jeudy, and then Tyrone Tracy at the 6-4. JT, you just mentioned it. Do you think after that, Harris, Hubbard, Connor, that's a little bit of a tier right there between guys like Etienne and Tracy?
Yeah, because I think once you get to this group, you're looking at like pretty much the old guys, or you're looking at backups hoping they get touches, I think. And it's also going to depend, obviously, on the NFL draft where some of those rookies go, because I think some of these guys in this round are definitely going to have guys coming in behind them, whether they get beat out this one season or not as rookies. It'll be up in the air, but I think they're definitely starting to get chancy with guys taking over starting roles. Any of these guys past this like fifth, sixth round. I think once you start getting past that, you're going to start getting nervous about rookies coming in and maybe cutting into some of these guys playing time this year.
And I mean, that is a great point to make because that is even with a guy like Travis Etienne, you had Tank Bigsby who flashed in spots last year. Tyrone Tracy, while he did have a very good rookie season, there's also buzz. Well, what if the Giants do take a running back in the NFL draft? So yeah, there are spots here where you're kind of wondering what's going to happen. And as we went through this 6th round, there was a huge run on wide receivers here with Jacoby Myers, Calvin Ridley, Jordan Addison, Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, and Rome Odunze. There was a lot of hype heading into the season last year about Brandon Ayuk. Then he tears his ACL. There's a contract situation. It just wasn't a pretty spot for him at all. for him to be being taken in the sixth round this year, Nate, there's even some Ricky Pearsall buzz heading into the season. There's going to be a lot of change with the San Francisco 49ers. So with a guy like Ayuk, what's that ceiling look like coming off of an injury, knowing that people are expecting Ricky Pearsall to contribute, knowing that it's just going to look like a very different team in general this year?
Yeah. Give me 1 second, actually, just so I don't get auto drafted, I guess. But
I'll talk on that while Nate's
Yeah,
drafting. I just think that Niners group is going to be really interesting this year. I think depending on what happens with CMC, I don't think they're going to give him as many touches as they had in the past. Obviously, with the injuries last year, they're going to have to throw the ball more this year as they're not as dominant as they have been in the past. So I think you're going to look at it and you're going to be like, hey, they're going to have to throw the ball more. Now, can you count on Ayuk coming off the injury? Pearsall is going to see some more touches. We talked about it in the last couple hours, me and Jorge and Aiden, on Juwan Jennings maybe being a buy. So I think it's going to be tough to figure out that 49ers receiver room. I definitely don't think it's as clear cut as it's been in the past. I think all those guys are going to see some touches. The question is going to be, is anyone going to be an absolute stud for you in fantasy? I'm a little worried about that it might be really even across the board between all those guys.
Yeah. Is it a Green Bay Packers from last year's situation where you had
Exactly.
3 or 4 guys? Yeah. That's kind of the read I'm starting to get on it too. So speaking of that, as we continue to go through and talking about Green Bay Packers, we'll get there. Jaylen Warren and Jonnu Smith close out the 6th round. I love Jonnu Smith this year. Then we have Evan Ingram, Mark Andrews, Jalen McMillan in the 7th round, a guy who's generating a lot of buzz as a up-and-comer this year. Stephon Diggs, Travis Kelce, Jaden Reed. Then we have another dead zone run with Pollard, DeAndre Swift, Aaron Jones, Isaiah Pacheco, Ramondre Stevenson, and Brian Robinson. Aiden, this is kind of the spot where RBs start to get a little bit unsexy, huh? You're looking for flex guys at this point.
Yeah, I'm not. I mean, if I get those guys, fine. If I don't, I'll just probably go to another position. It's kind of a weird spot.
Yeah, for me, jumping on Brian Robinson was the last clear-cut starter in the list, at least as of right now before the NFL draft. So I jumped on Robinson. I definitely was looking at the older guys this round. I was like, Pollard was on my list, Swift, Jones, all those guys. I was looking at Ramondre. I was looking at him, or Ramondre, Brian Robinson. All those guys were like, since I only had the 2 running backs and it was a clear-cut drop-off after this point, especially me being at the end of the round, I was like, I got to go at least 1 RB and a wide receiver here. So I snagged up Brian Robinson, even though he's a guy I don't own a lot of. To me, he's worth it at that spot. You're getting like one of the last clear-cut starters, at least of now in the 7th round. So you could see after this round, it gets to where you're basically taking backups, hoping that they cut into the starters time after that round.
And yeah, speaking of the 8th round, I want to jump straight to the mid 8th round because there is an interesting name that pops up that is in a new spot that people think might be a little bit past his due. So, guys, Nate, Cooper Kupp, Seattle, change of scenery worked for him. Do we think he's past his best? Do we think this might be a spot where he's going to do a good job this year? It's so in the air. I don't know what to think.
Yeah, I mean, you're banking everything at that spot on health, and if healthy, I don't think there's any reason not to doubt 17 to 20% target share is a possible. I don't know if that's a ceiling per se. I think he's capable of more, but I don't think much more than that. If you can get mid upper teens target share in the, what is it, this 8th round, you said? Yeah, in the 8th round, especially if he's your wide receiver was at 5 in this spot here, you could do much worse. I think the ceiling week to week is higher than some of the other names around, but they all kind of share that same DNA a little bit. We've seen the ups and downs of Joshua Downs. We know in Buffalo, any one of the receivers, as you talked about earlier with Green Bay, and Seattle was similar last year. Buffalo was another team that anyone can step up. Christian Kirk in Houston, who's going to be do we all agree? I think CJ Stroud is bound for probably I don't know about the biggest bounce back. That's going to be between one of two guys, but he's got to have a better season than last year. Correct.
Absolutely.
I absolutely think Stroud's ready for a bounce back. Their O-line was not great last year. It just got ugly. I tell you what, the Cooper Kupp, going back to talking about Kupp, it was between Josh Downs and Kupp for me. And I took Josh Downs only because I think he's going to be the number one wideout for the Colts. I just think they're going to, whoever's the quarterback is going to use him in that slot and hit him with a ton of catches. And I'm worried about Kupp getting as much share with JSN there. So I was between those two guys. I think Downs is the number one for the Colts. So I went with Downs over Kupp, but it was a toss up for me between those two guys.
I mean, yeah, the Kupp conversation is fascinating, and it kind of leads to the rest of the 8th round, because the rest of the 8th round you kind of start to see there is those middle rounds is where you kind of have to start knowing your ball a little bit, because you have guys like Charbonnet, Khalil Shakir, Tank Bigsby, Austin Eckler, Christian Kirk, Michael Pittman, and Darnell Mooney rounding out that 8th round. So, Aiden, I'm going to go ahead and ask you this. I'm going to give you my opinion, and you tell me what you think. I think anybody can nail the top 5 rounds of a draft. I think that's pretty cut and dry. That's pretty easy to do. Are you with me in thinking that championships, especially in redrafts, are won in the middle rounds?
Yeah, because I feel like middle rounds are where you see a lot of dead zone running backs, a lot of dead zone players, if you will. A lot of value can be found in it. There's just a clump of guys in the middle rounds. If you hit on those 2 or 3 value picks, if you will, then I think that's where the key is. So yes, I totally agree with you.
And as I'm on the clock right now, we're kind of trying to figure out where we're going to go here, because it is a dead zone at most positions right now. You know, it's a little too early for some of these upside guys. You have guys like Keenan Allen and Amari Cooper that still don't have homes. I think this is one of those spots where you kind of have to look at it and maybe hope for a year or two jump out of a guy like Keon Coleman. I know he's not a refined route runner, but at this point, you're in the 10th round of a draft. I mean, this is one of those spots where I kind of feel like, and JT, you can disagree with me if you'd like to, but I think this is a spot where you kind of have to start shooting upside and seeing where they could take you. Agree or disagree?
Absolutely. I think this is where you got to start ignoring ADP. And you got to start looking for guys that you think can pop, guys you think can have bigger years. This is a good spot to take a shot at them. I wanted to wait as long as I could on QB. And when Murray was my guy in this round, and when Fields and Murray popped off, I was like, okay, I'm going to wait and see. Do I go back-to-back QBs, or do I just take one? And then when Mayfield and Stroud, when Nate took Stroud, that was my guy. Stroud, I was hoping was going to be my QB1. So I was looking for Stroud. I was going to try to go Stroud and Murray. With these back-to-back picks coming up. When they win, I was like, I got to go QB here for sure. Mahomes, you know, the stats have not been what we wanted the last couple of years, but the guy is still one of the best players in the league. Yeah, I think they're going to add more offensive weapons after they saw what happened last year. They're going to be like, we got to have more offense on this team. So I think they keep adding weapons. So at this point, I'll take Mahomes there. And then I just like Justin Herbert's upside. I think the guy can absolutely sling. I don't think he's anywhere close to as good as he can be. And I think they're just going to keep adding that offense. I think they're just going to keep it improving. I just think Herbert in a division that we've seen a lot of scoring, because it is very competitive. Guys got to put up points. I think, you know, they're going to be putting up points. So I like the idea of Mahomes and Herbert back to back there. But I do, going back to your original point, Keon Coleman, I think you do have to go off the board here a bit and start jumping on some guys that you think maybe have some big upside that people aren't thinking about.
And yeah, I want to talk about upside in the 9th round right now. And I want to go to you, Jorge, because there are 3 guys in this 9th round that I think have very interesting upside heading into this year. I think Ricky Pearsall at the top of the 9th. I think Justin Fields at that 9-2, and then Rashid Shaheed at the 9-5 are just really all very interesting guys to me, because they all offer some level of big playability and are hype. So which of those 3, between Pearsall, Fields, and Shaheed, are your favorites heading into this season? Which one's your favorite? Stumped him.
No, Jorge, I think you're muted.
Sorry about that. So for me, it's Pearsall. You know, you look at the vacated targets from Deebo Samuel no longer being there. plays a role. He's slotted right now, according to ourlads.com, as being the starting right wide receiver, with Juwan Jennings being the slot wide receiver. So, I mean, this is why they drafted him in the first round, obviously. I mean, right? This has to make sense. This has to be the rationale. Like, they wanted him to be the next guy. They probably knew the Deebo Samuel's, shelf life of the 49ers was probably, a year, and then that's it. And that's just what happened. Now, Rashid Shaheed, yes, he's explosive. He makes plays. He scores you those touchdowns. He's not the Nick Westbrook-Akini. I'll give Rashid Shaheed more respect than that.
Please.
No, Nate, I'm not shaking your head. I'm not saying anything about Nick Westbrook-Akini.
There we go.
But I will say, if I had to choose which quarterback wide receiver connection I think is better, I think I'd take Purdy with Pearsall versus Carr and Shaheed.
First off, the amount of Derek Carr disrespect that you're throwing out on this podcast right now is uncalled for and unwarranted. We didn't say anything about your very good QB Jaden Daniels.
You're very good.
And nor would I, because he's an LSU guy, Jorge, so shame on you. But no, we're continuing just to go through on this, and we talked about Shaheed, then Spears, Juwan Jennings, David Njoku, Rashad White, Baker Mayfield, CJ Stroud, Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes as a late 9th round pick. I mean, I had friends telling me last year, Aiden, in fantasy football, they're like, I don't know why you're wasting time on Mahomes. He is a glorified game manager. And I was like, that's a crazy take. And now here he is this year in this first redraft, and he's basically a 10th round pick at the 9-12. So are we past the best of Patrick Mahomes in fantasy football?
I mean, I think so. Just look at the last 2 years. The offense has been run heavy, and he's just been average at best for fantasy purposes. So I think 9th, 10th round, getting into the double digits with the 10th round there, I think that's more appropriate for his value. I think elite fantasy upside is gone. Like, sure, can he be still a low-end QB1? I guess, but he's been a high-end QB2 the last couple of years. So what is there really to expect at this point from a fantasy lens?
Yeah, great points all across. And I'm sitting here right now. We are in a weird spot right now because all the players that really appeal to me seem to be quarterbacks. And it still feels, it's a one quarterback format. So it's hard for me to really roll the dice on that. So we're just going to go ahead and take DeAndre Hopkins right here because even in a redraft format, this seems like a classic Baltimore Ravens reclamation project where they sign an older guy outside of Odell Beckham. I know that one didn't work out, but guys like Steve Smith, who just kind of work out in that Baltimore system. I think he's a solid play heading forward this year. But we're looking at the 10th round? Yeah, we're looking at the 10th round. We started off, you said Justin Herbert, then Braden Allen, Rico Dowdle at the 10-3. Aiden, you spoke about this in detail last week, how much you hated Rico Dowdle this coming year. Is the 10th round, with us not feeling confident about it, is this the right spot? Is it too high? Is it a value? What do you think?
No, at this point, I'll take him, but just know I wouldn't take him before double-digit rounds, but at this point, I don't see any problem with it. Okay.
We made Keon Coleman, Quentin Johnston, Jalen Wright, Jordan Mason at the 10-7. Nate, this is a guy that I think is very interesting. They trade for him. They sign him to a 2-year extension. Feels like a very sneaky value and a guy that could, if things break right for him, be the starter at some point this year in Minnesota. Agree or disagree?
Oh, yeah. I think you bring him in at least to challenge for a spot. And with that offense, anybody that gets the starting nod is obviously going to be worth more than a 10th round pick. So one thing about this specific draft is that before, the NFL draft can shake up 12 of these picks immediately. But
yeah,
I have no problem with that. I mean, you have a person who everybody in that area is fighting off somebody for a spot, and if given the opportunity, they've shown in the past the ability to produce with significant touches. Saw that in Jalen Wright whenever, Achan was injured. We saw that with Jordan Mason specifically. Isaiah Guerrero, the same scenario. Ray Davis popped off here and there. Mitchell, well, I hope it's Pacheco. I think that's muddy in Kansas City at best. And then we have to talk about Tyler Algier. We don't. We'll pass Algier. And I feel like I'm just reading names at this point because it's so nice to actually read the names again and rehash all the misery that some of them brought us last year, or, excitement.
So with the dead zone we have here at running back, where it's basically second and third year players, Nick Chubb pops in, in this round. Is at this point, based on just how the draft's playing out, Rhett, do you feel like that is like, yeah, I'll take a flyer on somebody who was a perennial top 10 fantasy pick in drafts, not 2 seasons ago?
Who are you talking about in this situation?
Nick Chubb.
Okay, Nick Chubb, the 11-4. As of now, he still doesn't have a team, which tells me something about the league. The league usually at this point is going to pounce on a guy, especially at the running back position. That tells me 2 things. Number one, the league really likes this running back class in the draft, because otherwise, what Nick Chubb has been. He might be past his best. But yeah, at the 11th round, depending on the landing spot, I don't hate it. Like we said, at this point, you're shooting upside. You're taking guys that you feel like have some upside there. So I'm good with it at that point.
Yeah, I think that's actually been one of the things that's changed a little bit more than what it had been. And you're right. Typically at this point in the season, teams are bouncing and pouncing on some of these players. And I think maybe there's some gamesmanship being had where teams don't want to show their cards and they want to try to because Nick Chubb's not exactly the most sought after. Let's be honest. Of course, it's going to be a 1-year prove it deal. Maybe teams have inquired about him, but I wonder if that's a little bit of poker, not saying, hey, we want to sign Nick Chubb so that we can still present the idea that we want to draft, insert running back in the draft and hold valuable draft capital if there is a trade, et cetera. It's definitely turned into more a game of chess, more so than checkers. Not that it's been checkers in the past, but I think you guys know what I'm saying.
Yeah. What I want to focus on right now, and I'm going to go ahead and go to JT and then Aiden on this. In this 11th and 12th round, you have a couple of guys who I think are very good upside fantasy quarterbacks in Jordan Love and Bo Nix. If you're a late round QB guy, are we kind of looking at this right now and maybe reconsidering what we're doing here and kind of saying, hey, we might be able to get some value much later and then load up on places that might be a little more scarce in the 1 QB later on and just take the QB later?
Yeah, I think so. I definitely think the way this drops, you can wait on QB. Here I was looking at the QBs I took. I definitely could have waited. I'm taking Alec Pierce and Anthony Richardson here, loading up on my Colts players. But I definitely think you could wait, because I think once you get past those top 3 or 4 guys, I think there's going to be a lot of guys real close to each other. And seeing what a dead zone that becomes, it might be smart to take as many running backs as you possibly can early on in a redraft to make sure that you're getting those guys before you pile up on QBs. Usually in a 1 QB, I wouldn't take a 3rd QB, but I am in this situation just because Anthony Richardson is an absolute boom or bust guy right here. If he ends up somehow putting it together and adding the rushing and plays all year with the rushing upside he's shown, he could be a sneaky good play, especially if Mahomes has another subpar year. I usually wouldn't go a 3rd QB, but I only would do it in a situation like this with Anthony Richardson, where maybe he if he absolutely hits, he could end up winning you the league taking him this late. But Alec Pierce is a guy that's way underrated. Put up crazy stats, especially if AR starts most of the year. Alec Pierce, he loves Alec Pierce, and he chucks it to him deep. I think he's a guy that people are just highly dismissing in this offense, even though I already had Downs. Downs is my short guy. Pierce is my deep guy. Wan'Dale Robinson was a guy high on my list here, but Jorge grabbed him coming back this way. And Dubs, another guy that Jorge grabbed, were 2 guys that were on my list as wideouts that I think could bust out and be nice flex plays for you. So, and if I could have got a running back coming back, it would have been Marshawn Lloyd. who Drew took at the beginning of this round. That was the other guy I was eyeing as a second-year player who didn't get much action last year, but is an injury away from seeing a lot of time.
Yeah, and Aiden, let me come to you because I want to look at that 12, Aiden. I see Josh Palmer. He is a guy that I really I like the profile. He hasn't been super productive, but he's had some moments where efficiency stuff has said this could be a guy, and he ends up with one of the better top 2-3 quarterbacks in football, if not the best quarterback in football.
The best.
And
Yep.
the top 3 quarterback in football. It's fine. And we're going to just look at this, and we're bit of an uncertain situation at wide receiver room. Khalil Shakir is technically the number one, but he's not the sexiest number one in the league. Keon Coleman, hit or miss. Dalton Kincaid, hit or miss. Josh Palmer, hit or miss. In your opinion, outside of Khalil Shakir being the quote unquote number one, what does this wide receiver room look like to you and these pass catchers?
It's not as bad as and frustrating as the Green Bay situation, but I do see the similarities. I only took Palmer instead of like Curtis Samuel, Keon Coleman like you took, or really Dalton Kincaid or anybody else, is because I think Palmer, I'm not saying he's some big, gigantic target earner or anything, but every time he's flashed behind Keenan Allen and Mike Williams behind them, even when they've been hurt in his career, he's been good. Like, he is a big play downfield threat, and that's what put up big fantasy numbers as a big red zone threat. So I think outside of Khalil Shakir, yes, Josh Palmer does provide the most ceiling. And once you get in the double-digit rounds like this, you are absolutely looking for upside in ADP. And like JT said earlier, or you're looking for upside in ceiling, like JT said earlier, who really cares about ADP at this point. So I think he has the most upside out of Shakir. That's why I took him.
Speaking of upside, Jorge, I'm going to come to you. 14-5, Tom Brady. Is he coming back, baby?
I do not know, but something I found very interesting while scrolling through wide receivers remaining. Did you know that Dante Moncrief is still a draftable option?
Oh, wowzers!
That
is
throwback.
wild.
I love that.
Throwback. It was like 6 years ago.
I remember I was watching Dante Moncrief just drop balls in the bucket in the end zone for the Colts. Ugh, killed me.
Guys, so we've wrapped up the draft. We're going to go ahead and we're going to talk about our favorite early, middle, and late round guys in a little bit. But I just kind of want to park here for a second because a year ago, and it's let you know just how quickly life can come by you in this game. Tank Dell was a guy that everybody was high on, everybody was excited about. And now this year in 14 rounds in our first redraft mock of the year, he goes undrafted. So there's talk of him possibly not being able to play again, and what a tragedy that would be. So let's just say if Tank Dell somehow happens to come back, they're probably taking that super slow, right, JT?
Yeah, I just think in redraft, there's no reason to take Tank Dell. I just don't think there's any reason this year. If you're in Dynasty and you can stash him on an IR for the year, I think that's totally fine. But I just don't see the upside with him. Even if he does come back at some point in the year, how far behind is he going to be? You would expect the Texans to be in a playoff race in the AFC South there. You figure that's going to be a very close division once again. As it's come down to the last week, the last couple of years. So I just, even if they work him back in, I just don't see how he's fantasy relevant in a redraft this year. For me, I just don't see it.
Yeah, I hear you on that. So let's go ahead and let's wrap this thing up, and let's just go ahead and talk about our favorite guys through the early, middle, and late rounds. Let's start with you, Nate. Let's look at these top 4 rounds, and you tell me which one of these picks is your favorite from the top 4 rounds of this draft.
Let's see. Outside of any of, I'll stay away from any of my picks because that seems kind of boring. I'll tell you. I think we talked earlier, and I said that I think Chase Brown being hated on in the 3-8. I'm just content. I'm very, very content with having a person who I don't see, as far as I'm concerned. Draft hasn't happened yet. Maybe I'll be eating my words, but I really believe by the end of the year, he'll be firmly entrenched as a RB1 that you we're getting in the mid-late third round. And I feel like it's going to actually go down, assuming they don't make any, they don't draft anybody with significant draft capital. I don't think his draft stock is going to jump up real high. I don't. I think that's kind of firmly where he's entrenched for ADP.
I got to jump in with Nate here. I love Chase Brown. He was a guy as a rookie I was taking everywhere. I saw him play every weekend at Illinois, and I was like, this guy is so freaking underrated. I told everybody, they're like, man, your Chase Brown love is out of control. I'm like, he's just so under freaking rated. Mm-hmm. He was last year. He was so good last year, and everybody's like, nah, they're going to draft a running back and replace him. I don't think so. Now, do they take a running back? Absolutely. They're going to draft somebody. I don't think it's somebody's going to compete for him at first. Yeah, I would not be surprised if they try to go with a big back in like the 5th or 6th round. Like try to go with it's a lot of running backs out there. But I think, I'm not saying they're going to go in the 6th round, but a guy that I think size-wise, I think, a Damian Martinez, an Ollie Gordon, a Rocket Sanders. I think those are the type of guys they might try to get behind Chase that are a little bit of a bigger back to back him up, especially because we've seen their other backups have not been good. Zach Moss, I think, is absolutely done. So I think they will draft a guy, but I think Chase Brown is absolutely, I agree with Nate 100%. He's going to be the starter at the beginning of the year, and I think he's going to be a very good player. He's only getting better. I think the Bengals know what they have. I think they know they lucked into him with the 5th round pick or whatever they ended up taking him at. I think they lucked into him. I love it. If I can get him in that 3rd round, he would have definitely been on my list. I had Chase Brown and Alvin Kamara on my list there in the 3rd. If they would have either one of them would have got back to me.
May I make a just an overarching kind of blanket statement that I like every running back taken in the 3rd round there for where they respectively went. I feel like each one poses significant upside from each particular spot.
I think the 3rd, 4th, 5th round, like you said, for RB is going to be important. Looking at this draft, if you say, hey, this is going to be a lot of drafts, man, you better be on your horse and be ready to take a running back in that 3rd, 4th, 5th round. If you didn't take one in the 1st or 2nd, because you saw how much of a cliff it dropped off after those rounds. I think you got to be ready to take a guy in those, at least 2 guys probably in those rounds. If you want a clear cut guy, that's going to probably start because it gets bad real quick.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at my team right now, and I'm looking at it. I waited to the 6th round. It's Tyrone Tracy, Aaron Jones, Jerome Ford, Rashad White, Blake Corum. No thanks.
Yeah,
Aaron Jones is your best guy there at 7-9, and and I think the Vikings take a running back in the draft, even though I think Aaron Jones will play a ton this year. So yeah, like I said, Aaron Jones. I was right there with you. Possibly, if he would have got back to me, I would have taken him. But yeah, you could saw the 7th round was like the absolute end all be all. Once you got to the 7th, it was back up heaven.
Wasteland. Yeah. Aiden, go ahead and tell me your favorite value pick in this draft.
Oh, the entire draft?
Yeah.
Okay, give me a minute because I was just looking at the early rounds.
I can jump in here and tell you some guys I liked. I thought that 5th round, if you waited on running back, you got good value in Montgomery, Najee, James Conner, all those guys I was eyeing heavy in that 5th round. So I liked all those guys in there for the reasons we kind of talked about. Like after that 5th round, it got pretty ugly. I almost went back-to-back running backs. If one of those other guys got to me, I probably would have went back-to-back running backs instead of a tight end there. But I like those ones. If you go a little bit later, I thought the Jalen Warren at 6'11" was a pretty nice pick, seeing as he's going to be involved. I don't care if they draft Amari and Hampton in the 1st round. He's going to be involved. So I like that pick as far as if you waited on running back. That was a good one. And we talked about before, I really think, some of these 2nd-year guys, I think you can for a good price because if they didn't have a huge first year, people are going to be down a little. Like we talked about, you said, right, with the Keon Coleman. I think, Xavier Legette at 11-7 was a guy on my list, a guy I was eyeing. I think Wan'Dale Robinson, again, I think the Giants are going to throw a lot. If they don't take a wide out somewhat high, I think he's a guy outside of Neighbors could see a lot of targets this year. So I do think there's some wide receivers that are kind of sneaky there between the 10th and 12th rounds, which makes me look at this and go, man, I need to go running back a little earlier just in case, because I can get some wideouts I still like later where I really don't like the running backs later.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I'm looking, like you said, wide receiver. I mean, you have Darnell Mooney, who's coming off of a 1,000-yard season. Ricky Pearsall available in the 9th round. Rashid Shaheed available in the 9th round. Just, some quality guys, like you said, that you can get a little bit later compared to that running back position. But it's what we've said for years now, whereas running back is just a more scarce position. And this just feels like one of those years where if you're going to do a 0 RB build based off of this first redraft, this may not be the year to do that, but we don't have rookies involved either. So
I got my guy.
Go ahead.
Okay. I think this hurts me, but I think Drew taking Justin Fields in the 9th round is like an excellent pick. I'm always a huge, like every single year for a number of years now, I'm always a huge I'm always a huge late round QB guy. And Justin Fields was literally my poster boy, if you will, for this year. I was literally just about to take him a few picks later, but Drew kind of sniped me on him, if you will. I think a lot of the general public and fantasy community as a whole will be kind of surprised from this mock that Justin Fields went ahead of a few guys like Dak, Jordan Love, Matthew Stafford, most notably. I'm sure I'm forgetting a couple, but in my opinion, like out of that whole clump, I would rather have Justin Fields just because of that top 5 rushing upside, and then if he can even, advance as a passer as well. So I love that for Drew. And I also love, quick shout out to the running back position, which is huge for fantasy, obviously. Jonathan Taylor at the 301, just insane value to me. You could make a legit argument, in my opinion, this might be bold, to start talking about Jonathan Taylor at the 1-2 turn, and I would have no problems with it. So Justin Fields in the 9th round for a later pick, I'm a huge late round QB personally guy, and then 301 Jonathan Taylor, insane value in my opinion.
We talked about if we did the reversal 3-1, I was going to be excited about Jonathan Taylor. I would have taken him at 112 or 2-1. Yeah, if I would have went back and looked at this and realized where I was going to be at running back wise, I probably changed my pick and I probably take Malik Neighbors and Jonathan Taylor at the turn, knowing I can come back and get Marvin Harrison at the end of the round. So 3-1, I think, is just absolutely insane value for Jonathan Taylor that late. I in redraft leagues, it's hard for him to get past me in most leagues. Like I'm taking him either in the first or second round in most leagues. So I thought that was a great one. I would absolutely freaking pass out if I got Jonathan Taylor 3-1 in my redraft league. I'd be so pumped.
All right, guys. Before we get out of here, let's go ahead and let's go around the frames, and each of you go ahead and give me your biggest takeaway from this first redraft mock that we did. And let's start with you, Nate.
Yeah, I think it's proving to me that the late round quarterback is going to be something that's going to be in non-super flex leagues a strategy that I'm going to probably deploy, because I see the first 5 and then I see that break in round 6, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then come round 9, any one of the guys listed there, even if I don't pull the trigger, then I go 2-3 rounds later and I'm seeing the second round upside picks of Bo Nix and Caleb Williams and even like Matthew Stafford, Aiden, where you in the 11th round for your QB1 with those weapons. I'm more than content. And don't get me wrong, I would love to have Josh Allen. I would love to have Lamar, Jaden Daniels, etc. But I just look at the separation and I think I would be much happier having the skill set, the 2s and 3B positions instead of the onesies. And yeah, I think that's the one takeaway for sure that I can identify.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now from my perspective. If I look at it now and I see this draft board laid out, I could probably take Marvin Harrison at the 3-9 and then bounce back and get Bo Nix in the 10th round, or Matthew Stafford or Jordan Love, and I'm perfectly fine with that. So, yeah, it changes a lot looking at the whole board. Jorge, final thoughts?
It's one of those things where I feel like a lot of you have been saying, like this is shaping up to be a very running back early on heavy redraft type of year. just based off of our early. Not granted, this is like the early mock draft pre NFL draft, so obviously a lot could happen between now and August. But if that's the case, you said it. You said it best. It's you don't win your league in the first 5 rounds. You win it in the middle portion of your little portion of your drafts.
Mm-hmm.
So, if anything, looking at the wide receiver position here, I mean, starting in round 6 and going down, I mean, we're talking. There's a lot of like second-year players that we're trusting to like have breakouts. Like for example, Maya Dunze and McMillan back to back. I'm really hoping that turns out to be not just a 1 year. I'm really hoping that McMillan is not a 1 year anomaly, and the addition of Ben Johnson to Chicago with all the upgrades they've made to protect Caleb Williams and not re-signing Keenan Allen is going to benefit, Robo Dunze, who was basically non-existent last year. Yeah, it's definitely going to be a running back heavy early draft. I think at least that's how it's trending with this one mock that we've done.
JT?
Yeah, for me, if I don't get a running back in the first or second round, then I need to absolutely eye running back between the 3rd and the 5th. I need to get 2 guys there for sure. I just think you're there. Obviously, depending on where the rookies go, you're going to figure at least this season, I think 4 or 5 rookie running backs should be in that top 5 or 6 rounds, depending on where they get drafted. But I definitely want to go running back. And I think, like Nate said, waiting on QB. I also think waiting on tight end, especially in a non-tight end premium league, I think is worth it. I took Laporta as I ran out of time because I had Pickens there and I didn't get the move. But if I wouldn't have taken, if I would have got Pickens there, I would have been totally fine waiting to get Muth in the 11th round as my top tight end. I just think once you're outside of the top 2 or 3 guys, I think there's a lot of guys that are going to be very similar as far as points per game the rest of the year. So I'm probably going to wait on tight end just because there's enough guys I like in general late. And then I think if you can wait and take, Justin Fields, Kyler Murray in the 9th, 2 running QBs, or like I said, take a shot on Anthony Richardson in the 14th. Because again, if Anthony Richardson sucks and they like bench him, it's not killing my team that I took him in the 14th. If he ends up just balling out and running for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns a game, I'm absolutely flipping out that I got him in the 14th round. So if he ends up being terrible, to me at that point, that's an easy cut and just go get somebody else, So I think high upside there. Caleb Williams in the 12th round, I think is really nice. Drake May in the 13th is great. So I think there's a lot of upside at QB with some of these teams.
And Aiden, final thoughts.
Yeah, so I've already talked about the late QB thing. I totally agree with everything that Nate said a few minutes ago. But basically, my one big takeaway from this is looking at this very early mock for the NFL draft. Once you get past the 8th or 9th round, like it gets real ugly real quick. Like, sorry to say, but like the talent falls off a cliff. Like at that point, you're like, is there much appeal here? You're literally choosing between backup RBs and the wide receiver 3s and 4s. So if you don't hit on certain positions that you get your guys at, you might be waiting a while and you're kind of like, and then you have to do some maneuvering after the draft, and you might not be satisfied with your draft. But
what could help with all that and help with everybody's situation. And once we get to that point in the draft, throw in some IDPs in your redraft league, and then therefore you don't have to worry about the dead zone in these drafts.
Okay, well, if there's one thing we can always rely on from Jorge Edwards, it is a very, very solid vouching for IDP fantasy football. So, Speaking of, guys, let's go around the frames and let's go ahead and plug anything you guys might have going on right now, whether it be inside or outside of fantasy football. Let's start with you, Nate.
I gotta tell you, I'm just getting back. I'm building up. I gotta tell you, the baseball season starting. I know that's a curse word sometimes, but my focus definitely to football will gradually build up. You will see more content from multiple different aspects this year. We have a couple of exciting things going on with a couple different servers. And can we say anything yet, Jorge, as far as do we have promo codes for some of the other areas of interest yet?
Yeah, so we recently partnered with Matt Kelly's the guy behind Player Profiler with Fast Draft with the Fast Draft app, and so if you want to use the promo code Frames and join one of their drafts, it's really fun. Like it's literally 4 rounds, 4 to 6 rounds depending on the draft type. 20-second timer. You could do IDP drafts only. You could do rookie prospects only. There's something for the Dynasty crowd, for the Redraft crowd, for the IDP crowd. So definitely sign up and use the promo code Fantasy and promo code Frames when you sign up there.
Cool. Aiden, what you got going on, buddy?
Yeah, the articles have obviously slowed down the last week or so. I'm hoping to get out an article or two, for the draft. But definitely after the draft, we're doing certain profiles and stuff. I'll obviously be on Dynasty 365 every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern here in the FAF YouTube channel with Jorge and JT. And lastly, I have a Buffalo Bills-centric podcast called Around the Slice that you can find on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify, and those are weekly episodes. So just wanted to plug that quick.
And JT, Aiden kind of just did the work for you, but go ahead and finish this off with what you got going on, bud.
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me Shoot the Gap, Dynasty 365, occasionally on here with you guys on Fourth and Frames. DLF, Dynasty League Football.com. If you're a member over there, I've got a ton of rookie articles coming out, a bunch of running backs, obviously big running back class. I've got all my breakdowns, my grades for each player, where I think they're going to go in the NFL draft and where I would take them in fantasy. So all that stuff coming up over the next couple weeks over there. If you're into IDP, on top of Shoot the Gap, I have my IDP rankings over there, my top 25 rookie IDPs plus my top 150. And if you're into college stuff, I've started Devy ranking as well. So I got my top 75 Devy players to look for this year. If you're in any kind of Devy league, wondering guys you should be looking at who to possibly draft and take this season, the offseason, looking towards next year, check out my Devy rankings as well.
So it just sounded like that guy does everything. So
Yeah.
Guys, that's it. It was fun as always. Appreciate you guys taking the time. You guys lock in with us next week on Fourth and Frames. Hopefully we have the crew all together. We'll see what happens there. But for me at R Manual Sports, for Nate Markham, at Jorge Edwards, at A Weingartner 13, and at JT Orange, we are Fourth and Frames. I'm Rhett Manuel. Toodles.
This should be played at high volume, preferably in a residential area.